Hello and welcome to Cherry Street Chat, the official podcast of The Spectator. My name's Diego Dumlao and I'm the Sports and Opinions Editor at The Spectator.
Hi, I'm Hadia and I'm the Managing Editor at The Spectator.
All right, and today we're joined by an amazing guest, our former advisor at The Spectator, Dr. Jha. Could you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. I'm Sonora Jha. I'm a professor of journalism and media in the Communication and Media Department, and until recently was proud to be the advisor for The Spectator, and it's so great to be in this seat with you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us today. I don't know how busy your life has been recently, especially with the book tour and everything.
Never too busy for you guys.
Thank you, I appreciate it. So kind of just give the audience a little bit of a background if they don't know who you are. How did you end up here at Seattle U? What's your writing background look like? Your journalism background as well. Yeah, just kind of a little bit of a rundown, I guess.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in India, and my first job, I actually spent my 21st birthday as a reporter for the Afternoon Dispatch in Korea, which was an afternoon magazine in Bombay.
Oh, wow.
And then I went on to work for the Times of India, and sort of rose very quickly in my career. And by 26, I was heading a bureau for the Times of India, a chief of Metro Bureau in Bangalore in India.
Oh, wow.
And then I moved to Singapore, and there I was a contributing editor for East Magazine, and I wrote for a couple of other publications in Singapore, sort of Pan-Asian magazines. And then I came to the U.S. to do my PhD in political communication. And that was at Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Go Tigers.
Yeah, go Tigers, exactly. And then I came to Seattle U in 2003. And I moved my career to academia, which was unexpected, but I started to love it immediately and have been teaching here since 2003. So it's like, 23 years? Yeah.
Wow.
Nice. Yeah, so I mean, what do you do in your role here at Seattle U?
So currently I am the Loyola Professor, Seattle University Loyola Professor.
Okay.
We're still trying to figure out what that means.
Yeah.
But I think it means good things. It means that the university would like me to pursue my scholarship, which is writing these books, and also teach and be, mentoring students, and and I get to travel for my research and really, really focus in on the research. So I'm really glad for that. But otherwise, I've been, we do teaching, scholarship, and service.
Yeah.
And until recently, I was Associate Dean in the College of Arts and Sciences. So I'm really pleased that I've been able to perform different roles at Seattle U. But really, my closest relationship has been with The Spectator. And I am so glad to still be in association with you guys.
Yeah. How did you start out as being advisor for The Spectator?
Well, a year or two after I arrived, there was a transition, and I was asked if I would be advisor to The Spectator, and I said, yes, I will get my journalism fix. And that really was, it brought me back year after year, and I think I've done it for 21 years, so it was a nice time to move on. But it's been just such a pleasure to sort of be advising, not running the show, sitting back, watching generation after generation, one generation, right? But year after year of students making the newspaper their own, giving it their own philosophy, their own practice, and being there to sort of guide and advise. And I really did get my journalism fix from that, watching the hands-on work happening. And I've stayed in touch with so many alumni from The Spectator and from classes, of course. And actually, while I was on my book tour, I met several alumni who came to my events, and it was so lovely to follow people's lives and see what they're doing now. So I'm still in touch with people, and I hope to be in touch with you guys when you go out into the world.
Definitely.
100%. Do you see yourself staying at Seattle U for the foreseeable, or is that something that you just, as it comes, you're figuring out?
I mean, tenure is such a thing. It makes you really comfortable. And so, as my son says, when I say, I'll move to a whole different city and I will start my life over. And he says, no, you're not going to do that. You have tenure and you're old. So I think I think I'm going to stay at Seattle U. I've been fairly happy, and
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
always like things that trouble people about institutions and about academia in general. I put it all in my last book, The Laughter.
Yeah.
But in general, I've been happy being a professor. I've been happy in academia, and I'm happy at Seattle U. So I think I will continue
That's
at
great.
Seattle
Yeah.
U. But I will definitely, my career as a writer is something that I will continue to focus on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you've written multiple novels at this point, and you've also been a journalist for a majority of your life as well. Is there one that you prefer? Like, do you prefer being just like a writer, or prefer to being a journalist? Or, I mean, they kind of intertwine as well.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, which would you prefer?
Yeah,
Let's just-
so all my books have started with questions, with the big questions, with curiosity as a journalist, which is so key
Yeah.
to any journalism. And so in my heart, I'm a journalist. My training is in journalism.
Right.
And that's the way I approach things. So journalism and my academic research, right? So with every book, I've started with like something that's been in the news, something that's been in our culture, and I'll start by interviewing people,
Right.
and I'll then do in-depth research. I'll do some academic research on these subjects that I write about, and then I will put those aside or sort of keep them in my mind and turn to creative writing. So then build a story
Oh.
sort of out of thin air, but really informed and deeply researched, right? So I think both things, and then I started to realize that writing fiction and writing novels ended up being very helpful to me as a journalism
Oh, really?
professor. It made me a better journalism professor because I started to tell students to ask deeper questions that, me learning how you write about character, which is like every character in a novel has a deep desire, and
Yeah.
that's the desire that drives them to do the things that they're doing.
Right.
And so to get to those questions when you interview someone rather than ask surface level questions like, oh,
Yeah.
how did you feel about this or something, I think that bringing that to my journalism teaching actually enriched my style of
Oh,
teaching.
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the biggest reasons that you're here today is we want to talk to you a little bit about your book here, Intemperance. You're currently on your book tour for this. I believe this was released in October.
Yeah, October 14th.
Yeah, October.
Yeah.
So why don't you talk a little bit about the novel, where you gained your inspiration, what the writing process looked, just a little bit about Intemperance.
Yeah. So I don't know how what you all thought if anyone has read it, what that was like, but it's a deeply personal, intimate novel, and it's kind of built from some of the things in my life, right? Like this is a twice divorced woman. She's a professor at a university in Seattle, and yet
Sounds a little familiar.
Yeah, that's just the baseline, and then I fictionalize the whole character. Like she does these intemperate things. She decides she wants to take on a third husband, or a husband for the third time. And so she sets up this thing which it comes from Hindu mythology, this thing called a swayamvar, where kings and would invite princes from across the land to compete for their daughter's hand in marriage. And so she is turning that into this thing where she has the agency of picking a third husband by making men compete for her hand. And so I just thought that would be a playful feminist retelling of
Yeah.
that whole thing, and then taking some goddesses from my culture and sort of putting them in Seattle, and then sort of also looking at caste and intercaste queer romance from her ancestry. So I brought all these elements together to tell this story of a feminist search for love and in middle age. And so sort of breaking a lot of the rules there, taking the marriage plot. That is, a lot of these romance things have a marriage plot where this woman's headed toward marriage, but subverting it in a way. So yeah, I've enjoyed doing that, and sort of doing a mix of an Indian story and a Western setting.
Yeah, I mean, what did the writing process look for this? I mean, when did you first think of writing this book? I mean, it came after the laughter.
Yeah.
So yeah, when did the writing process start for that?
Yeah, it started a little bit after the laughter, the book tour, and things. I started to think about like, what am I writing next? And there was, all these questions in culture about, are men relevant anymore? What is the relevance of masculinity and everything? And I was kind of studying that, and I'd written a book called How to Raise a Feminist Son. So
Yeah.
there was, and then written the laughter, which was from the point of view of a white man, and so there were a lot of these questions, and I sort of did a deep dive again into what kind of new sort of masculinity do we want now, and what are men aching for as well? What are men wanting to represent in their masculinity? What kind of tenderness are they allowed, right? And so I took those themes and just started playing around with them. And so for me, the process is I start with the voice. I want a good
Okay.
voice for the narrator and for the main character. And so once I've figured out what the voice is it's playful and smart and kind of a little bit off the rails and a little
Yeah.
bit like unhinged, taking that and then running with it is what I do. And so then I sort of like fall into the milieu of the novel and want no disturbance and just want to be following it. And
Yeah.
so I was fortunately on sabbatical
Oh, okay.
and wrote the whole novel during that sabbatical
Oh,
period. So I
wow.
started a little while earlier than the
Yeah.
sabbatical, but then spent all the months in the whole year of my sabbatical writing it.
Oh, wow. This is kind of going from back what we were talking about, like journalism and writing, but like, was it easy for you to like go from like journalism writing to like creative writing?
No, it
Okay,
wasn't
yeah,
easy
that's
at all.
I was wondering.
Because journalism has, its rules and its constraints,
Yeah.
right? And I respect those rules and constraints. And I
Yeah.
was just like, so there was a lot that I was very anxious about. Like my first draft of my first ever novel
Yeah.
was boring. Like, I mean, I was just like, here are all the facts, and I have to cover all this, and I have to, quote people, and so my first editor said, like, you really need to get to this novel needs a heartbeat, and you need to hang out with real people and not just academics. It was like, academics are real people. So I think that setting a few things aside and learning to write fiction was a very beautiful and, I had a sense of wonder about
Yeah.
it, and it was lovely to do. So I actually took classes at Hugo House here, which is
Oh,
close
oh,
to us.
cool.
Yeah, so I went and started taking classes, really steeped myself in fiction to say, like, I can do this, I can try this. And so it was difficult, but I loved, loved, loved the challenge.
Yeah.
And I, because I don't have a creative writing degree or I've never taken an English or creative writing class. For me, it's like I'm still learning, and
Yeah.
every novel I write feels like a process of
Something
learning.
new,
Yeah.
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 I like that.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about in the process of writing something like this, a lot of it is the research and doing interviews with people. How do you go about finding the right people to talk to, or like, do you just know who you want to target for that specific novel, or do you kind of just go out into the public and you see something and you're like, I'm going to use that? Like, what does that process look like?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So for instance, with my first novel, which actually the US edition of that is coming out next fall.
Oh, really?
The first novel was only published in India by Penguin Random House India, and so now the US edition with my publisher Harpervia will be out, and I got the opportunity to go and tweak it a little bit.
Oh, that's great.
But with the first novel, it really, I was driven to writing a novel not for the sake of writing a novel, but for telling that particular story, which was of farmers in India dying by suicide. And it was just such a grim story of hundreds and thousands of farmers. And I was researching it as an academic and as a journalist. And so it really started with those interviews, but I started to feel like I want this for a bigger audience. And the ways in which people are telling me their stories has this lyrical quality to it. It has this feeling of something more creative than being trapped in just a journal
Right.
article, right? And so that's why I learned to write fiction. And
Yeah.
even with the laughter, I first went and interviewed French Muslim families and did a lot of research on Islamophobia. And for me, that was really important to do because I am not Muslim, and I was writing the story of a Pakistani woman, professor, and the obsession of this white guy obsessing about her. And so for me, that was a lot very challenging, and I really, really wanted to do it right. And
Yeah.
so I talked to a lot of people, and so I think each story informs the process, and each story sort of tells you who you need to talk to. And then each time and this is something I say in my journalism classes, that each time you talk to a person, you ask them, like, who else should I be talking to?
Yeah.
And so it grows from there. And yeah, and even for this book, for writing about caste, I interviewed and talked to and consulted with a Dalit author that I really love and admire, Yashika Dutt, and she's written Coming Out as Dalit, because I wanted to get that right, because I am a Brahmin. I was raised as a Brahmin upper caste woman, and I was writing a story that involved a lower caste or Dalit person. And so I think yeah, definitely my journalism is where it begins, and that informs, like, who else do I need to talk to, who am I missing, whose voice is not represented.
Yeah. Yeah. So how's the book tour been so far? You've been on tour since this came out in October. How's that been? Where have you been?
The book tour has been amazing. I've been just so pleasantly surprised at how many people show up and the questions I'm asked, and being in conversation with other writers that I really admire. So I don't know whether I can pick a favorite event, but I really enjoyed the one in New York.
Oh, that's great.
I was surprised to see how many people showed up, like,
Yeah.
friends, of course, but now, because the laughter had already been around, I've been pleasantly surprised to see um, people saying, I'm a big fan of the laughter, and so I read this book,
Yeah.
and it's just like a big ego trip.
Yeah.
But also meeting alumni, as I was saying earlier, like meeting former students and seeing them has been really lovely. So yeah, it's been wonderful, because I think, to me, you spend so many months and years writing in silence and solitude, and it's a very lonely process, right? And you don't know whether this is going to resonate for anyone. Is this something that is a thing? Is it a thing, right? And so then you go and you meet people for whom the book has meant something, and when people say things like, this changed my life, or this made me cry, or this moved me so much, I mean, that is so rewarding.
Yeah.
And it's just that's the joy of it. So it's not just an ego trip to be on a book tour, it's also this feeling of being in conversation with people about the ideas, about the issues.
I'm sure that's very fulfilling too. It's like
Yeah.
your work is making an impact as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Have there been any questions that have come up during the tour that like have really resonated with you, like have really made you think about it past just that Q&A, or that past that just one event?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. Let me think. I mean, one good conversation I had at this private event that a friend had in the Bay Area, where a lot of women, South Asian women, were talking about whether they can expect men to be different, whether they can expect tenderness and a different kind of masculinity. And it was so divided, the conversation, and I felt like this is so interesting that we are having this conversation, and so many people's experiences are so different, because I think as you get older, you tend to hang out with people who think similarly,
Yeah.
right? And meeting people whose expectations were so different was really interesting. Some questions that I've gotten. One question, of course, is everyone asks me, like, is this you in the book? And I have to say, no, she's a professor of sociology, totally different from me, right? But also, you know, the about the courage to write something that is so intimate and so close.
Yeah.
And I think that is such a good question. And also, what does it mean for a woman to be happy being single
Mm.
at this age, right? Is that possible? Is that possible? Are you faking it, right?
Yeah.
I think, and they don't ask me things like that. They don't
Yeah.
say like, "Are you faking it?" But it's
Yeah.
like there's a
Yeah.
lot of wonder about that,
Mm.
Right.
and it's been so interesting to have this conversation of this something that's changed. It's not about rejecting love and rejecting marriage or rejecting men, but it's about expecting more and
Mm.
staying in a state of romance or
Yeah.
staying in a state of wanting better,
Interesting.
and wanting things to change and having more agency for women and more ability to desire and ability to go after that desire.
Yeah, I think especially like in South Asian culture, like there are so many expectations when it comes to marriage, and it feels like you're on a timeline.
Absolutely.
And I haven't gotten too into it, but I feel like I was already getting like I think it's cool kind of like showing that narrative that well into your life these can still be questions that you're having, and like a curiosity to like explore certain romance that like it doesn't, there's no cutoff deadline, like you're 23, okay, you're where's the ring?
Yeah. And I had signed up to do all of that, right? I was
Yeah.
married for the first time at 23, had a kid, I was doing all the things that were expected
Yeah.
until sort of the tables were turned on me. And I
Mm.
was just like, okay, wait, hold on. These rules don't serve me. They're meant to serve everything else. And
Yeah.
breaking some rules end up like upsetting the cart. And suddenly I'm
Yeah.
not the good girl anymore. And so I think that's led me on this path of like being questioning and self-actualization.
Yeah.
And even in raising my son, I was not a self-sacrificing mother.
Mm.
And yet, oh my God, can you believe he turned out okay?
Yeah.
So I think that I want those things to change, and I want more freedom for your generation, right?
Yeah.
I want definitely for South Asian women like you, and definitely for all young people to just completely disrupt these narratives and disrupt these expectations and really go after true love, like
Yeah.
true feeling of being even loving yourself before you start to play these roles in
Mm.
which you're supposed to look like a loved person or a loved woman,
Yeah.
especially,
Yeah.
right? Like someone who's taken care of and given all the societal things. Like if we could change that, I think we would really arrive at true uh, true unconditional love.
Yeah. Definitely. Kind of going back a little bit to your work with the laughter, you talked about how you were writing about an individual who you aren't from that background. How do you touched on it a little bit, but how do you make sure that you're accurately representing the people that you're targeting in that novel, Like how do you make sure you're not um oh, I'm sorry. I'm like trying to think of the way
Yeah.
to say this, but like how do you just make sure that you're not portraying them in the wrong way,
Yeah. And not appropriating,
Right.
doing any sort of cultural appropriation and
Right.
stuff. I mean, is it possible for a brown-skinned woman to culturally appropriate a white man's world?
That's the question.
I don't
That's a
know if
great
it's like a
question.
problematic thing. In that, so it's kind of I was quite comfortable appropriating this white
Mm.
man's
Right.
voice in
Yeah.
telling that story, but of course I wanted to do it well, right? I didn't want to
Yeah.
caricature and some mustache twirling racist guy or something like that, and
Yeah.
so I really had to do a few drafts, right? My first draft was definitely a caricaturish guy. And then I also gave it to a couple of white male friends and I said, hey, make yourself useful, white guy. Like, and they were quite willing to do it. And it was fun. So they gave me some feedback and said like maybe this and tweak this.
Yeah.
And then doing a deep dive into white men's writing, and it was funny. I always joke about how like now that the rest of the world has started reading women of color, I'm going back to reading white guys. But really wanted to get it right and also make a sympathetic character. Like
Yeah.
I wanted to represent. His name is Dr. Oliver Harding in The Laughter, and I wanted to represent his frailties and his desires and his where do things go wrong and what does he want, what is he craving as well, right? While he is being problematic as well, I think it's good to know where where the lack of something is coming from.
Mm.
And so that was really important. The one that I said was challenging and was a big risk was to represent the Pakistani
Right.
Muslim woman's voice. And I think for me that was there were many steps I had to take. I interviewed Pakistani students on campus. I interviewed Pakistani faculty, and then also gave it to readers and other women in the community to read and see if the representation was fine. And also did a deep dive into research. And also, I wasn't writing from the point of view of the Pakistani woman. I was very
Okay.
clear I was not going to appropriate that, right? And for me, that was really important. And I was writing from this man's point of view, telling a story about his gaze on this woman.
Right.
And
Okay.
so for me, that was a much more comfortable place, and I would not
Definitely.
have appropriated. And similarly, in this, like I'm not in this book, when I write about caste, I am not trying to appropriate someone's story that's not, I'm writing from the point of view of the woman and her visions and these hallucinations that she's having and stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I use a device that can then represent certain things
Right.
while not appropriating them.
Yeah. Going from like, I feel like in journalism, what we're learning is like, trying to be like a funnel to like share someone else's story and not necessarily have too much of your own voice, like not to take over, but like for writing, like you said, you try to find like the voice of your characters. So is that something like you had to approach differently from like, like is that different from like keeping your voice out of it, or do you think your voice like now meshes with the characters that
That's
you
such
come
a
up
good
with?
question. I do think that the voice in this book, in Intemperance, the voice is very close to my own voice, which is forbidden in journalism,
Yeah.
right? I
Right.
still think
Right.
of my first ever editor where we were not even given bylines easily, right? You have to really struggle to get a byline. You have to struggle to, you never wrote I. You never wrote I and
Yeah.
my and stuff in your stories. And so to get to this point where I've written a memoir and now I've written this
Yeah.
book, where she's a different protagonist, but it's an I voice, and a lot of her interiority is similar to my own interiority. And so I definitely had to learn how to do that and be comfortable with that, and also see the benefit of that, be convinced of the benefit of
Yeah.
writing from a very deeply intimate point of view. And so once I was able to be comfortable with that, it came more easily.
Yeah. So we're coming up on our last couple minutes here. So just that we have just a couple questions for this
Yeah.
Q&A. Um, is there any kind of like research that you're doing right now towards like some new novels? I don't know, maybe a sneak peek that you want to drop for us? Or...
Nothing that is well formed.
Okay.
So I'm definitely doing more reading and trying to, what I call deepening the well of creativity. And there are some glimmers of things. And so I'm headed to India to do a little bit
Oh,
of
okay.
research. And and then for my book Foreign, which is coming out next fall,
Yeah.
I'm doing a little bit of research to tweak that as well.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. And what advice would you give to aspiring authors? I mean, you've dropped a lot of advice throughout this Q&A, but if there's like one thing you would tell an author that came up to you right now and was like, "Hey, I really want to write my first novel. How do I go about it?"
Yeah, I think there are two things that are not very popular. One is you have to read a lot. Reading and really expansive reading. Read literature written in other languages and in translation. Read things that are very different from your own life and culture. Read things that are written by people of different ages and races and things, and just sort of expand and deepen
Yeah.
your creative vocabulary, your creative treasure trove, right, that you can dip into. And then also do multiple drafts. I think for me, my books really shine and get to a different level in revision. And so not being in a hurry is really important. And also never compare yourself to other people's success. I think, staying with something and believing in yourself and really honing the craft and the art of writing is where the beauty is. And I know that with my first book, I was in a hurry and it took forever because I was in a hurry. And now I don't want to be in that kind of hurry. I really want to think of it as art and take myself seriously as an artist. And I would say taking yourself seriously as an artist as a young person is to really, you know, take yourself away from the gaze and take yourself away from the marketplace and the constant exhibiting of your work and deepening and doing it in silence and solitude and believing in yourself.
Cool. Thank you for that.
Of course.
That wraps up our Q&A portion, our more serious portion. Now we're going to head into a little bit of a fun segment. Before we started, we asked you to think of just a few like book recommendations. I know I need to read more. So, yeah, I mean, what are some book recs?
Yeah, some amazing books that I've read recently that stay in my mind are Zara Chaudhry's book, The Lucky Ones. It's a memoir about being in India during the Modi who later became prime minister, supported riots and killings of Muslims in Ahmedabad in Gujarat in India, and it's a beautiful and powerful and really stunning memoir.
Yeah.
I think that is a huge recommendation. Then Katie Kitamura's recent book, Audition. That's a beautiful one as well. And it's what else? Megha Majumdar's A Guardian and a Thief. I'm reading it right now. Both these latter two books are, I think, both of them are on the finalists. They're finalists for the National Book Award. So they're both recent books. And just read widely. And these are the ones I'd recommend.
Cool. Thanks. Do you have a message that you would like to tell our audience? Anything that we haven't already touched on before?
Oh my gosh, a message for the audience. Let's see. What are you reading? What book are you buying to gift to people this winter? I would
Intemperance.
recommend a book called Intemperance. No, just kidding. I would say let's really give books as gifts. I think in this holiday period, I think books are just a beautiful thing, and especially for young people in your life, please encourage them to read.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Jha, for joining us today. For the audience at home, be sure to check out Intemperance. I believe it's on Amazon.
Why are we naming Amazon as the first?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
So no. Yes, it is on Amazon,
okay.
but it's also on anywhere that you buy books. It's in all the bookstores, and it's available online in any place that you buy books.
Perfect. Yeah. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Cherry Street Chat. If you're not already, be sure to subscribe to the Spectator's YouTube channel, as well as following our Instagram. Also, be sure to check out all previous and future episodes wherever you get your podcast, YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcast. See you next time on Cherry Street. All right.